On episode 59, Laura and I chat with Kalaya'an Mendoza from the Nonviolence Peace Force and across Frontlines. We, of course, talk about nonviolence, how we address racism with our own communities, and a whole lot of science fiction. I think Kala has provided me with one of my favorite podcast moments ever. If you don't know Kala, you are in for a treat. Thanks for being here. Grab a beverage, pull up a chair, and enjoy listening to our conversation with Kalaya'an Mendoza. My name is Bruce Reyes-Chow, and this is BRC and Friends. Each episode, my co-host and I chat with activists, artists, academics, and adventurers to discuss politics, faith, pop culture, technology, and as you will discover, pretty much everything that pops into our heads. This is basically an excuse for us to hang out with friends and colleagues and riff about things that matter. Welcome to BRC and Friends. And we are jumping right in, and welcome to BRC and Friends. I'm really excited. Kala and Laura are with me today. We're going to start off, as we always do, introduce ourselves a little bit, and then go into just talking about the world and all the kinds of things that are happening these days. So, again, if it's the first time with you, my name is Bruce Reyes-Chow. I am the host of this show. I am the people when folks contact us that, I tell people, get back to my people. That's me. That department gets fired every couple of weeks for their incompetence and scheduling and editing, but otherwise we're pretty good. I'm in San Jose, California, make my way kind of writing, speaking, pastoring, gigging, all that kind of stuff. So that's what I do. And I'll invite Laura if you would introduce yourself. Oh, no, I use he, him pronouns.
My name is Laura Mariko Heifetz. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I currently live in Nashville, Tennessee, although I will never be a true Southerner. So thanks, Southerners, for letting me live here. I hang out in the world of theological education. So that is where I am.
Great. Awesome. And Kala, if you would go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Kalaya'an Mendoza. My pronouns are he or they, them. I'm the Director of Mutual Protection for Nonviolent Peace Force. NP is an international humanitarian protection organization based in Iraq, South Sudan, the Philippines, Myanmar, Indonesia, Ukraine, and I lead a lot of the work here in the U.S. I'm an organizer, activist, and a queer Filipino immigrant, and really happy to be here.
Great. I am so excited. I was sharing before, and I don't know if you can necessarily fanboy over everybody. I mean, why not? If you don't have a podcast and just invite people that you admire on, why is any of us doing this? And so, Kala, I've watched you from afar. I have just so much respect for what you do in the world, and yeah, everybody go follow, support, do all those kind of things. But we'll get to that later too. But as you know, and so BRC and Friends, what we do is we talk a little bit about what the folks are doing. Sometimes we have authors, we have activists, we have athletes, all kinds of folks. And so, but we're not just those things. And so we talk about a lot of other stuff that's bringing us joy in the world or help moving us or inspiring us. So we start off with a little bit. So we'll get to what you're reading and watching later on, because that's what pop culture. But these days, anything bringing you joy as of late? And I will go ahead and start. So some of you know I'm a big baseball fan. My Oakland A's, I've been going to them for decades. We've had season tickets. My grandfather went. It's like this serious thing. They are moving, and we went to our last home game. They may be in Oakland next year, but we've given up on them. We've canceled our season tickets. And I posted all these pictures from my children being born, and their first picture at home has an A's hat on them. I mean, and we're in San Francisco, so we've raised our kids to love the A's and hate the Giants, and now my A's are leaving. But out of that grief, I got to look through all these years of pictures and all of the memories. I'm gonna get all weepy of being at A's games with my kids and watching them all grow up, and the friends they had with them, and all of that. And I posted something on Instagram. The first picture I posted in the gallery was the helmet nachos, and I will forever. Those bring me so much joy. Not good for my health, but I would eat one of those almost every game. Anyway, that has brought me some joy, and remembering kind of the tradition and the memories of my baseball times. But and what about you all? Anything brought you joy in the recently? Go for it. I love this. Won't be on video, but we're all like gesturing hands. Here you go. Here you go. Here you go. Here you go.
This
I'm
really
gonna
is an
start-
Asian American podcast.
Exactly. I'm going to start showing props now too. People are like, you guys are terrible, but yes, good radio. Laura, go for it.
Please.
Okay, to fill the God-shaped hole in my heart, we have been going to so many concerts. So on Friday, we went to the Pink concert, and Brandi Carlile was one of the performers. And I've loved Pink and Brandi Carlile for a really long time. So that was wonderful. And then tonight, we're going to go see Esperanza Spalding play in the building where the Nashville Symphony is. And she is so cool. So I'm so excited.
I'm pretty sure you're cooler than I am.
Just real gay, man. I'm just real gay.
Well, that too, but my kids are going to see concerts, and I'm totally at that stage now where they're like, "Oh, do you know who this is?" Like, of course I don't know who that is. Like, why would you even ask me if I know who that is?
To be clear, I'm at the stage where I am also wearing earplugs at like big concerts. So, okay.
Okay. Cool points too.
I know.
That's smart, though. That's
It is
smart.
true.
You don't want to
get one set of ears. I'm just
Yeah.
You're gonna be like my dad, who's always now like doing this. Dad, I think you need to get your ears checked. No, I don't. What? So good. Visuals on the podcast. Very helpful. Colin, what's brought you joy lately?
Yeah, there's a couple things. One, Ahsoka on the Star Wars show.
Oh.
I loved the new Star Wars, the Dave Filoni verse. I'm just a nerd. I'm a huge nerd. I'm a huge nerd. So just like saying that, it's just brings me joy. Another thing, it's kind of strange that this brings me joy, but this past Friday we did a training with Korean seniors on community safety, mutual protection, self-protection, de-escalation. And Mrs. Sung, who one of the seniors that were there, really wanted to practice her. She said she was really nervous in Korean and wanted to practice what she was learning. And there's a moment that usually comes up in these trainings where I'm like, we shouldn't have to do these. You know, our elders shouldn't have to be learning how to defend themselves based on what we've learned in war zones. But afterwards, I was just asking like what people's reflections were, and she said that she was nervous about the training, but afterwards she felt safer. And that, to me, that was just that was like some semblance of joy, or like something that helped ground me. That sometimes the work that we do, we don't know what the impact is. So it was good to hear that just in that moment, someone felt a little bit safer than they were coming in.
That's awesome. We will get back to nerding out about space shows later, but this seems like a good segue. Tell us about Nonviolent Peace Force. I mean, how did you get into? I've been fascinated by watching it. I'm hoping for trainings out in California at some point, and wanting to kind of see like what.
I'm dying right now. Oh man, we should be recording the video.
Well, I do have the recording. I'll catch a screenshot of that one where we now have a now all of us are going to be touching our chest. We're going to talk about the musical. Did you watch the musical episode from?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about
Shake
that
Your
later.
World. Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, back to Nonviolent Peace Force. So how did you find your way into this work? Give us a little bit of history. If some people are listening to this, will be totally on board with what you're doing, but have never heard of it. So give us a little bit of 101, but also how you got into it.
Sure. So I'll start out with just like a little bit of background. So I got started on safety, primarily protest safety and community safety back in '99, before the World Trade Organization protests in Seattle. I was trained up by the Ruckus Society, Black Cross Collective in the Bay Area. I'm from Eastside San Jose. So
What?
Represent, yeah. Yeah, I went to Silver Creek. Yeah. And I saw, obviously I'm an activist, but also I saw that there was like a need for support. I didn't always need to be at the front of the march with a megaphone. I didn't have to be the one that was, that was seen. I felt like my role was to serve and to support folks that were doing our movement work. And really, since the late 90s, I've been involved in movements and actions all over the world, supporting frontline communities from Turtle Island to Myanmar to Aotearoa, New Zealand, on protecting themselves from state and non-state actor violence. And the way I got involved with Nonviolent Peace Forces in 2021, during the Derek Chauvin trial, I was brought on board as the director of U.S. programs to build out our work in Minneapolis in response to and in preparation for potential violence, whether that's white supremacist violence from the state or from bad actors coming in to be able to protect community members. I was at Brooklyn Center when, after the murder of Daunte Wright, when the police kettled in protesters, used impact munitions like flashbangs, tear gas, all of those things against peaceful, nonviolent protesters, mind you. And I really have been trying to build in more of that understanding around situational awareness, around de-escalation within our own community, because concurrently, as I was in Minneapolis, we continue to see the rise of anti-Asian hate. And we know that this is not a new thing, right? Since the inception of this white settler colonial state, it has been a very violent place for people of the global majority. So I wanted to make sure that our communities, most especially those most vulnerable, had the tools that they needed in order to be able to cultivate that safety. And my bigger goal is for people to recognize that, we cultivate safety, and safety doesn't need to come down the barrel of a gun, which unfortunately here in the US, that's where people go to, whether that's down the gun of a police officer or someone owning it. I don't make any, judgments on how folks want to protect themselves, but we try to utilize and reflect what we've learned in literal war zones, practiced by communities on the ground, unfortunately now here in the U.S.
Great, thank you. Yeah, the way that you all hold yourself as a person on the socials and that kind of stuff, but also there seems to be so much continuity between you, the people you work with, the organization, and what you're all doing. I mean, I think that when you all follow and watch some of this that's going on, it really does, for many of us who are engaging in this work, make so much of this real. I mean, it just really feels like when you're out protecting people and helping folks understand safety without falling back into returning violence. And I mean, I'm so thank you for that. Laura, do you have a question or thought?
I guess I'm kind of wondering, in your work, I imagine you encounter a lot of people who are still working through this formation of like, what does nonviolence look like, especially among communities that are not majority white? Like, I think majority white communities have a particular embodiment of what nonviolence looks like, but just wondering, what is your work like, especially with younger people who may not have as much experience or just a very different background?
That's a really great question. I try to make it very clear that we're not the peace police, and we're not trying to tell people, and I think that especially for people of the global majority, we have been told that we are, violent, right? If we're angry, when we're righteously angry.
Right.
I try to do my best to have folks recognize that that's a very colonial white settler mindset, and it in trying to restrict that is violence. What I try to do, similar to the work I do around nonviolent direct action or strategic nonviolence, is like, this is what works. This is what has worked for me, and these are the tools. You can take it, you can leave it. It's all about folks' consent and people feeling a sense of agency and autonomy around what they want to practice. I only try to model, this is what, these are the tools that I've seen effective. If they don't work for you, that's totally fine. But unless we are starting to really reimagine a safer and more just and verdant world, and inhabiting that, then we'll never actually meet that. I mean, like Octavia Butler and so many science fiction writers who has helped us to construct what the future looks like. That it's so important that folks start to inhabit that, and also not feel like nonviolence has to look only one way, right? And everyone's definition of violence is very different. Or what's violent and what's acceptable. Like I eat meat, I think that's violent, but for me, it's acceptable because I try to get my meat from the local butcher that gets it from the local farmer. That the meat is like raised. I'm happy, but it's really about doing a lot of the work and building up the trust with the community to understand where they're coming from, and not policing or dictating. This is what this needs to look like, but like co-building that vision together.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. It just happens that the three of us on this particular episode are all Asian. So tell us a little bit about how this work has been happening in the Asian American community. Out here in the Bay Area, there's the awesome Asian Americans who, if I get to judge and determine who is awesome, who are doing a lot of really good work. And then there's some, we've just had this, thing happen in San Francisco's school district where, all the anti-Blackness is coming out of the Asian American community. We just had the Lowell, founder of the Lowell Parents Group, talk about reparations and said out loud, we don't owe the Blacks anything. They owe us for all the crime that's happening. It was just like, well, you've just said it out loud, right? These are like, and trying to like within our own communities, help one another figure out how we do this. How has this work been both fruitful? You shared a little bit within the Asian American community, and then how has it been a struggle? What do you say to our own people in a sense around some of this work?
What I tell folks that I've built a relationship with is that our proximity to whiteness will not protect us from white supremacy. Our complicity to white supremacy will not keep us safe. And we've seen this over and over again, from the Chinese Exclusion Act to the Watsonville riots to the incarceration of Japanese Americans, right? Like, I think a lot of times we are trying to find that equilibrium and harmony. And how do we find that with our oppressors, right? That's a whole other conversation.
Right.
But what I try to tell folks is like, are we centering the most vulnerable within our community when we're talking about certain issues, or are people only advocating for themselves? So, there's this amazing organization, I'm sure y'all have heard of them, API Women Lead, up in Oakland, that have continued to do amazing solidarity work. And I think it's really important to uplift organizations like them, organizations like Suru for Solidarity, who, have a keen analysis around the fact that solidarity is power with, not power over. And I think for our siblings in our communities who may be more on the conservative end, who may be on the more white adjacent end, just like being able to have that conversation with them. Like, why are they there? Why do they feel like that's where they need to be? I don't like calling people out, especially if I'm in community, because if I'm community, I want to have that conversation. I want to understand where folks are coming from. At Nonviolent Peace Force, nonpartisanship, and just like understanding where folks are coming from, and empathy is so important to the work that we do, because people, in essence, everyone wants to be safe, right? Everyone wants to live a happy life. Having a better grasp on where folks are, where folks' perspective arise, helps us to then strategically message or connect with them, to maybe bring them along on our journey as well.
And everyone, this is why Kyle is a better person than I am. So
I'm not. Trust me.
Lauren's like, oh yeah.
Well, that's a foregone conclusion. No, I was just thinking because, in Nashville, in Tennessee, we have been dealing with something.
Really? Tennessee?
Don't be shocked. And that Justin Jones, one of the people who is very much steeped in the nonviolence tradition that in large part did start here, is Black and Filipino. And so just thinking like we do have models of how this can look And I'm not saying you have to be that in your family or in your body or anything, but we definitely have some contemporary ways of thinking about solidarity, very concrete ways.
Yeah. Well, as soon as that got out, all the Filipinos were like, yes, he is one of ours.
I was like, oh, here it comes. Yeah.
I mean, we're claiming Olivia Rodrigo, and I don't know. It's so we'll give Justin too. So, well, this is awesome. This is amazing. Again, make sure you follow and all those kinds of. But let's get to other things that are happening in the world these days. Namely, nerdiness. So let's. What do you? It's like, oh gosh. Yeah, now we're all excited. You can see,
I know.
I was like, oh god.
Here it is. Here it comes.
What? So, Laura, have you watched any of the have you watched Ahsoka or Strange New World, Star Trek? Are you do any of that stuff?
I have been very limited in my Star Trek exposure, mostly because I am mooching off of other people's Paramount Plus logins, and I don't have Disney. So I have not been doing the Star Wars thing really at all, but the Star Trek stuff, my brother and my dad kind of keep me up on it. And then I have this one colleague here, and we talk about Star Trek.
Come on over.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm really behind. You don't know how much time this music thing takes up.
Going to concerts. It's so hard. Good. So, where should we start, Kyle? Tell me, why do you like Ahsoka? Why is that particular show so?
Well, that's a great question. If I may, I'd like to hear from y'all. Like, why science fiction? I think people are like, oh, that's some nerd stuff. But obviously it resonates with us. I'd love to hear.
It's almost like there are ways to envision how we could become or who we could become. And I feel like in a lot of ways, Star Trek has such a good arc of like things really did not go super well for us. And then we made a shift and decided to have a different orientation to the universe. And I feel like Star Wars has so much shadow side actually relative, because some people are into Star Wars, so I'm trying to be inclusive. You see what I'm doing here? I don't think the storylines are quite as strong. I'll be honest. Don't come at me. Oh, come at me. I don't care. Yeah, so I think that's why I get really into science fiction, because this helps me cultivate my own imagination about who we can be starting now.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's very much, you watch these shows and they continually push us into thinking beyond some of our own imaginations. And I think, and even looking back on old Star Treks and go like, how did they do that? I'm like, well, at that point, maybe people weren't even watching it, but what they were doing was like, whoa, how did they, and now where does that head now? I mean, the number of times that I've just found myself getting weepy or things, and my kid's like, oh my God. But just watching these, there's like movement around your soul in many ways, especially some of these recent ones that have been clear what they're saying, but not been overly done. So, but I think it's the inspiration of the imagination that is in good. My kids who are like in their 20s, they were definitely of the more dystopian space, right? They're kind of
that's like Hunger Games and
Hunger Games, the Elite, the Divergent series, the Maze Runner, all that was a different vibe that I think spoke in some of the same ways, but had a different thing. But Kyle, how did you get into it? Where did you start? Like, what's your story?
Yeah, I think for a lot of folks, like the next generation, and it was just so. I want to live in a world where money doesn't exist, right? Where folks are doing work that makes them feel fulfilled, I think I remember I kind of like struggled with why am I such a nerd? And I remember in 2013, Professor Angela Davis and Greasy Boggs had a conversation at UC Berkeley, and they were talking about visionary organizing. The fact that we had to move away from protest organizing and going towards visionary organizing. Like, what's a world that we want to build? And that was like the piece for me that finally clicked. Mm-hmm. It's like this served as a sci-fi served as a space for us to look at things expansively with there's no limit to our imaginations, right? And I think like a lot of folks who grew up in the 80s, the shadow of HIV/AIDS and the loss of in our community and like the fear of nuclear attack, all of these things like kind of like stuck in my head, right? Growing up in California, we're always ready for the big one. And I needed to ground myself in this like beautiful vision in something that even though I may not experience it directly in my lifetime, being able to work towards something. So just like having that and seeing that and like these characters are like old friends, like it's just so comforting to hear these stories and like, our brains are just like wired for that. So yeah.
My wife and I just started watching Picard again. And so from the beginning, it gets a little ridiculous in the middle, but we watch it again and like, you're like, oh, like these people come back. You're like, oh, I remember what it was like. I may be a decade older than you all. I don't remember how, but like just thinking about what we were doing when we were watching Next Generation or Deep Space Nine. I mean, all of these ones, it's like there's this, it's almost like my A's, my baseball, like these memories that come back. And I think I love the parts where where their humanity, it's not like everybody is just like, oh yeah, we're all good now. It's like, oh, we're going to bump up our resistance to change and stuff as well. I mean, just kind of, are we, so that part also, and how do folks work through that, I think has been amazing. But so what's the nerdiest thing that you would like to share with the world around your science fiction life that you've done? Either of you. I don't think this is quite the same. So I was a big Dungeons and Dragons person too. Like that, in addition to Laura's face was awesome.
Sorry.
Just a minute
I'm sorry.
ago.
My eyes just rolled back in the back of my head. No, I'm pretty sure my brother and his friends they still have a game.
Oh yeah. My oldest child, we can't do family dinner on Sundays because they have a online D&D thing.
It's been going for,
But I used to cut middle school to play D&D. Okay.
I never let things get in the way of school.
Well, I was part of the resistance to the model minority thing early on. That was
for you.
That was a claimed space for me. Thanks, Laura, for upholding that. Great.
I'm sorry, I'm Japanese and Jewish. You don't know.
All right, nerdiest things. What are you willing to share with the world? I'm waiting.
Heglumir kap judgebom.
Oh my gosh.
Higon mak. Higon heglap. Yarwika.
Okay, I owned it, but I didn't learn it like that.
Oh my god.
I love constructed languages. Like
they're not going to recover from this.
Your little like linguist heart.
Oh my! I mean, like it was a way I got to go around like cursing when I was younger. Patak.
I mean,
no, it's just
it's the best language for cursing, to be honest.
It really is.
This might be the best thing I've heard in so long. Thank you.
Yeah.
What a gift.
I have one child that may learn, but I'm almost ready to be done. That was like, Laura, go ahead. Laura, anything nerdy?
In high school, I bought, this can't top it. I'm just saying it's in the same genre. Well, so in high school, I bought the pattern for the costume this the Next Generation uniform. And I sewed it very poorly, might I add. Not a seamstress, because my perfectionism doesn't extend to that. Like, I just want to be done eventually.
Right.
And so I did make myself a costume in high school and then wear it. And I had the communicator, I had the phaser, I had the tricorder.
Were those the full body onesie uniforms?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it from earlier or what?
It was Next Generation, because I was in high school in the 90s, and it was like the early 90s one. So not season 2 or 3. It was like season 4. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
We're about I'm
Those
feeling
were
like it's going to go into a deep dive now if we're starting to talk about uniforms by years. We just lost a bunch of people like, okay.
Or found a whole new audience, right?
That's true. I just recorded with a friend, and we must have talked about 10 minutes about chickens, and so I'm gonna start a podcast called "What the Cluck" with Bruce Reyes-Chow. So so you never know what we're gonna learn. All right, other things we can say science fiction, but other things you're reading, watching, listening to that have moved you that you would love to get out in the world, amplify out there. Anything? Reading, watching, listening to.
I love Reservation Dogs.
Oh,
and I watch it on Hulu, and I just that show is just so nicely done.
Oh, it really is.
Yeah,
it really is. Yes, that's a great one. Yeah, if y'all haven't watched it, I'll pull a link into it. If you haven't watched it, I'll put Laura's friends' passwords and login information.
No, that one I do.
Okay. All right, other things you're reading, watching, listening to. Anyone?
Well, so Laura, no spoiler, but like the ancestors scene in Reservoir. Oh my gosh, it's still. I sobbed.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
But
and then did you see the one with all the uncles? The uncles taking care. That's this season. The uncles taking care of like one of the young ones, and they're like teaching him this is what it is to be like a man, and it's so cute. Like it's really, but also deep at the same time because he teaches them too. It's beautiful. I love it.
Oh,
awesome!
Can't wait.
Awesome.
Oh, we did not get to the musical episode from Strange New Worlds. So Laura. Every series eventually, apparently,
does out. And
no, they push into different ways of being, and so they'll do a musical show, right? I found this blog that talked about the best musical one-off episodes, but Strange New Worlds just did one. They kind of moved into this. I don't know what the words are, this thing, and then made them all start singing. What did you think, Kala? Did you love it, hate it?
I love Strange New World for that. It's bringing a lot of the old Star Trek feel back.
Yeah.
It doesn't take itself too seriously, and this was an example of that. I mean, like a musical in Star Trek, right? I liked it for what it was. I think it was adorable, and I'm loving Strange New World. Yeah.
Oh yeah, too. I was watching, going, oh my. Well, then we're all looking up like who are the real singers and who are the who was on Broadway, who wasn't, and you could definitely. We were trying to guess who were the actual people that could sing and who they gave major songs to and all that. I loved it, but I pretty much love anything musical or things that people do that I can't do. And so any musical, Broadway, I will go to community musical theater that is technically not good, but I will go and just gush love towards that stage because it's something that
it's so great.
It is like, that is the last thing I'm going to do is to get up and sing in front of people. I will do a lot of I will use lots of words in other ways, but that singing. All right. So anything else? Reading, watching, listening to that we want to talk about?
I'm rereading Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Renee Brown. Really trying to figure out ways to continue to weave in a lot of that work into ours, and just nerding over obviously Star Trek, Star Wars, The Walking Dead. I mean, since we're still in, it's interesting as a prepper. It's interesting to kind of think through these scenarios, right? Because we're still in a mass disabling event. How do we build communities in the face of that? So yeah, that's kind of where I go. But also, I like to just turn off and just watch clips on TikTok of the Real Housewives, or Trixie and Katja. So, yeah.
We all got to have our space. I mean, that right? I mean, at some point, right? There's always this kind of space. I kind of feel like you need your own podcast to just talk about all these genres of things that are going on in the world. I mean, branching out into
podcast with Kalaya'an would be so good.
Yeah.
We went to a record store with some of our friends who were visiting from out of town because, as Bruce recognized, there were so many people in Nashville this past week that we knew. And we picked up Allison Russell's new album. And because maybe it's because I was raised in the cassette CD era. And before that, my parents' vinyl, it really helps me to read liner notes.
Oh, yeah.
And so I just listened to it in the background, first go through. And then the second one, I pulled out the cover and the liner notes and read through them while she sang. It is devastatingly beautiful. And so I'm obsessed with that, but I like to treat myself to other things. Like I do have the Dixie Chicks latest, and I got Shakira's, what I think is one of her best albums in Spanish also. So nice. Just being a geek that way.
A vinyl geek. I just returned. Yeah. I used to DJ in high school. I don't know if you know this about me, Laura. I was in high school in the mid '80s. And my kids do not believe that I used to DJ, except when all these songs come on the radio now, I'm like, that's not the original.
Oh God.
They're like, what? And I'm like, oh my God, what has happened? Yeah. So, we all have vinyl now too. But I remember now I'm buying vinyl that I used to have, and I got rid of it, when vinyl was dead. And then now I'm, are you a vinyl person? Or have you, Kala, have you resisted the trappings of that?
I'm not cool enough to be a vinyl person. I aspire to be.
No, maybe you're just beyond.
I was gonna say, I think
so cool you've passed.
I'm pretty sure that's where I was going to.
No. Oh, I mean, like vinyl is just, it's classic, and it's always going to be. It's just always going to aesthetically be beautiful. And I think that the sound is just crisper, or it's a different kind of crisp.
It is a sound. And then you get the ones that you buy, and it gets to a part of the record, and it starts skipping, and you're like, oh, that's right. That's why we've stopped
it was used
vinyl.
For $1.50.
That's right. That's like, this is why we don't use those anymore. Anyway, this has been great. How can folks find you, Kala? What's the best way for people to get connected to you, organizations, all of that? And I'll put this all in the notes too, but tell folks.
Sure. On social, on Instagram, I'm at Kala Mendoza. That's KalaMendoza. I mostly post, protest, community safety stuff. Share out what's happening on the ground in different locations, and ways for folks to kind of like connect to building out mutual protection in the U.S. Or you can check out our organization's website at nonviolentpeaceforce.org. Once again, that's nonviolentpeaceforce.org.
Great. And as I like to tell people, you check them out, and you also give some money if you have it. Like if you have resources, support all these organizations if you can. Again, doing lots of work that many of us wish we could be doing. And working towards, strive to, whatever. But for those who are actually doing it, make sure you throw some money their way also. Laura, you got anything exciting going on that you want to tell us about? Because you get paid so much to be on the show. Is there anything you want to shill out there going on at the school? Anything?
I will say that, we have a new dean. She's very, very cool. And I will just say that I'm always so impressed with our students and our graduates. And I just had coffee with one of our graduates this morning, and that was delightful. And just a reminder to all of us that people we're Gen X, so right, that people put a lot into us and invest a lot into our leadership. And I'm always reminded of that, so that I'm trying to always put into the next generations that are coming after us, because I think a mistake that some other people have made in the past is to think that we were the ones. And the point is really not that we're not the ones.
What?
It's everyone is the one. Sorry, Bruce. Everyone is the one. And so keep always like lifting up other folks and making time for them for these one-on-one conversations to just encourage people to become who they are supposed to be. And also, I'd like to apologize for using the old name of the chicks. My bad.
I didn't call you out.
Well, call me in then, man.
I love some of the recent stuff too.
I know it's so good.
It is so good. All right, we could probably. There are so many things we could get to use. I mean, that whole elder leadership transition. Oh my gosh, that could be a whole nother hour. But we're not going to do that. We may have to do that again. All right, thank you all for being on again. BRC and Friends. You can find us on all the places you listen to podcasts, rate us, review, all those kinds of things. Make sure you continue to listen this month. Doing a lot on Filipino American History Month, but also a lot of great folks coming on just in general. So again, BRC and Friends, and thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
BRC and Friends was hosted and produced by Bruce Reyes-Chow. Co-hosts were Jorge Bautista, Mickey Scott Bay-Jones, Amy Kim Caramis-Parks, and Laura Mariko Heifetz, and the theme music was composed and recorded by Marissa Magdal Laurent. Feel free to connect with any of us via the show notes. And lastly, please don't make me beg. Take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to BRC and Friends wherever you listen to podcasts. Until the next episode, thanks for listening to BRC and Friends.